Hey friends, it is Samara, and today I'm going to be using the August 2025 Flavors of the Month kit featuring Cartabella's Coffee Shop. First, let's take a look at what papers come in the main kit. So first we have this one, which is super cute, called Coffee to Go. Then we have this stripe pattern, which is Let's Make Coffee. And then finally, Lovely Lattes, which is so adorable. I love the white cardstock in this kit. It's magical. Additionally, we will get a full sheet of stickers, which is pretty great. This ephemera comes from the embellishment kit. And then finally, we have some additional papers from the paper kit. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the layout. So the first thing I have here is this photo. This is from a coffee date that I had with myself at my local Starbucks. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and trim this white cardstock down to 12 by 12. So just cutting off that branding strip. And then my piece of paper was textured on one side, smooth on the other, so I wanted to decide which one I was going to use, and I went ahead and went with the textured side. I love to leave a little bit of a border on my photos. To me, it seems to be more polished. So I'm just sampling a couple different papers, seeing which one I want to use to border my photo. So I do like to do a lot of single photo pages. And for me, it's nice. Oftentimes we take a lot of photos, but not all of them, or I should say, we don't need all of them to tell the story. Sometimes just one or a few can tell the story that we would like to share. So just cutting a little simple border around this photo. And then the next thing I'm going to do is grab these, oh my gosh, these cups. They are absolutely adorable. And I'm going to use this to create a border. Maybe border isn't exactly the right word, but before we get started on that border, I'm going to ink the edges of this photo of the border with ground espresso oxide inks. But honestly, any brown ink would work. So just taking my brush and just lightly dabbing it to the edges of this photo. Then I decide that I need a little bit more of a border. So I grab this little stripe. It reminds me of a wafer cookie. And this one is from the pattern paper kit. And this paper is called Fun Drink Floral. And I absolutely love the florals on the other side. And you'll see I'll use some of those too. So I'm just going to trim just a little bit, about 4 inches here. So I position that not quite halfway in the paper, and then I decide that I want to create a rough torn bottom there. And I'm going to use that ground espresso ink again and just very lightly, I don't want to say trim, but sponge the bottom of that paper. And then you're going to see I'm going to put it down, not quite. So I like the way that this looks so far. And then I spot the borders there. And so I'm deciding how I'm going to use some of those border stickers. They're really cute. So I was thinking about adding another pattern on here, but it was just too busy. I knew that I would lose some of the detail if I went with that coffee cup background. So I went ahead and I pulled out this one. This one is also from the pattern paper kit, and this one is called Coffee Shops, and I'm using the green side of this. And I cut those strips to be about 1 inch. And the first one I am going to glue to the bottom where I have the torn edge there. And then where I had torn this, I'm just going to carefully roll it up a little bit. It just creates a little bit of dimension, a little bit of texture. And then we'll go ahead and glue this down on the layout. I guess I ended up going a little bit, almost halfway down the middle of the paper. So let's go ahead and put this sticker in. I think I had mentioned last month that one thing I don't like is when the stickers aren't 12 by 12, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and honestly, no one is looking at your layouts as closely as you think they are. So move on. I did trim a little tiny bit off the edge there. It just wasn't quite 12 by 12. All right, so my photos for the most part going to go right in that area, and now I'm just going to start playing around with some of the embellishments. And the embellishments that I'm using, the paper ephemera, that is coming from the embellishment kit. So that little tag, and then the title that I end up using, or I shouldn't say title, but a little saying, a little phrase there. So both that tag and the today is a, what does that say? Today is a good day. That comes from the add-on embellishment kit. So I decide to add another little green strip towards the top of that coffee cup paper. Just a little bit, just to set it off from the page. And then I decide that I'm going to add some splatters. So again, I'm using my Distress Oxide. This is ground espresso. And I am just splattering this all over the page. I actually had thought about grabbing a coffee cup and doing a coffee ring as well. I think that would have been really cute. And again, just adding a little bit of edging to the ephemera. Again, using that ground espresso. This helps to unify everything, and being that this is all about a coffee shop, I thought that the brown added a nice touch. All right, so let's go ahead and put some adhesive on this photo, get that into place. Then we're going to come in with that have a good day little tag, and I thought it would look cute being popped up, so we're just going to add some foam tape there. And you'll notice where I position that. I position it so it's going over that top border, and that adds a nice detail. Really makes it look like it's part of the layout. It's very intentional. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab that little tag, which is, oh my gosh, it says with enough coffee, anything is possible. And this was perfect because on this particular day, I was at the coffee shop working on my planner. I do a sort of memory planner, so it's not in advance, but rather retroactive. So I go back and add photos and details and stuff like that about my days. I do keep a regular planner as too, but it's not as much fun as my memory planner. So we're just going to tie some of this green twine here. And something that I love to do, especially lately, is I will add I'll double or quadruple my twine, and then I like to take it and just cut it there and then I sort of untwist it, and then while I'm untwisting it, I'm separating the strands. So it creates a worn look, and again adds a lot of texture and dimension to the page. So it's a little bit fiddly, but you know, it's a fun look. I grab my tweezers to help me. So again, you just sort of untwist and then just separate each of those fibers. Maybe fibers isn't the right word, strings. Isn't that fun? All right, so I'm just about done, but I'm feeling like I need a little bit more on my page. So I go ahead and trim out just a little tiny bit from the striped background there. And I add a torn top, and you better believe I'm going to go ahead and ink those edges. And we'll put that into place. And you'll notice here between the today is a good day, the coffee tag, and then this little green spot, I do have a visual triangle going, which I guess I'm known for doing that. It's something I do on just about every page. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it. So I'm just testing out a couple of stickers here. We're going to go ahead and use that floral cluster. We're going to pop it up. Again, using some of that foam tape. And then we have this little coffee cup, which is so cute. But before we do that, we're going to add, it's like a notebook and a pencil, which, oh my gosh, if that's not perfect for this, I don't know what is. So we'll add that flat onto the layout, and then we'll add a little bit of foam to the coffee cup and just position that right on top there. That is adorable. All right, and then finally, we're going to add a date stamp here. And one of the things I like to do when I do my date stamps, especially if I have a messy layout, oh, I spoke too soon. We're not quite ready for the date stamp. I'm going to use from my stash some of the Florence alphabets from Bella Boulevard. And this color is a brown color. I think it's called Pony. I start my title up at the top and then I realize it's going to look better at the bottom. So I'm just going to spell out coffee. You can see I'm finally starting to run out of my letters here, which I have had these for maybe 4 or 5 years. And when I go to a crop, my best friend and I, we always share them. So we're just going to add coffee in here, and then I'm going to hand write date using my Tombow Food and Suki, I'm sure I said that wrong, pen. And I like to do the fake calligraphy or faux calligraphy where you just write in cursive and then you go back over all of your downstrokes, just thickening the line so that it looks somewhat like calligraphy. I had thought about adding another tag, but I declined. And then finally, we're going to go in again with that date stamp. And like I was saying before, I do like to stamp it and then stamp it a whole bunch more. So it just is a fun little look. And there we have it. We're just about done. I'm going to add a little bit of pink Distress Oxide. I think this one was spun sugar. And we're just going to splatter that, wet it down, and then splatter it across the layout. Typically, I'll take a piece of paper or something to mask my photo. In this case, I just used my hand. All right, and that is it. I sure hope you enjoy.